welcome to delicious, succulent, super tasty tofu. Not one, not two, but 3 ways. Okay, tofu, many of us can get lazy in it. I often do it in an air fryer or do a teriyaki style, might do it sesame and ginger. However, we have broken out. We have 3 of our favorite ways to cook tofu that you have never tried. This has taken us most of the week of trialing tofus. We've gone through literally kilos of tofu to come up with these 3. Okay, come in close and I'll just show you what they look like. Okay, this one here is a spicy, sticky barbecue tofu ribs. Banging, really tasty. This is a breaded cutlet. So it's a tofu schnitzel or a tofu breaded cutlet. Genuinely really meaty, really umami, banging. And finally, or firstly, we have a double battered buffalo tofu tender. Okay, trick to this recipe is we're gonna double batter our tofu. So that might sound weird, but first thing we're gonna marinate it in, I've got 50 grams of white flour. I've got 90 ml of oat milk. I've got half a teaspoon of smoked paprika, half a teaspoon of garlic powder, half a teaspoon of salt, and a 1/4 teaspoon of black pepper. I'm gonna add them all into the bowl, mix them well together. We're gonna add our tofu in on top of that. Make sure and marinate that we cover it all really, really well. We're gonna add our marinated tofu into the air fryer and we're gonna cook them at a high heat for about 15 minutes. Some air fryers have a temperature control, others just have one temperature, but at a high to medium heat for 15 minutes until it crisps up around the edges. And if you don't have an air fryer, you can simply use an oven, preheat it to 200 degrees Celsius and bake it Boom! Look at those for beautiful. So the batter is going to really crisp up around the outside, and don't worry if there's any bits protruding. That's just going to be a lovely kind of extra nuggety bit of flavor. Okay, next up we're going to make our second batter to marinate these. As we said, these are double battered tofu tenders. Buffalo. Really nice. The first batter is delicious. Yeah, it really is. They kind of look like mini sausage rolls. Okay, I'll tell you all the ingredients we're going to add into this one now. We've got 4 tablespoons of oil. I've got 2 tablespoons of water, 2 tablespoons apple cider vinegar, 2 tablespoons of tomato puree, 2 tablespoons of maple syrup. That's going to give the nice sweet note to it. I've got 3 teaspoons of garlic powder. I've got 2 teaspoons of paprika. I've got 1 teaspoon of salt, and I've got 1 teaspoon of chili powder. If you don't like it that hot, maybe put in half a teaspoon of chili powder or a pinch of it. But I find the teaspoon is nice. I like the bit of spice. I like the bit of heat. We're going to add this into a bowl, whisk it together with a fork. Pop in our tofu, our first battered tofu, mix it really, really well. Make sure this is an oil-based one, it's not as sticky, so make sure and coat it really, really well. We're gonna pop our tofu tenders back into the air fryer. I'm gonna close this down and bake this for about 10-15 minutes until they go glazed, kind of really grizzly and just packed full of flavor. Whoa! So it started to kind of crisp up around the outside. There's a lovely smelling, and this sauce is so banging full of flavor. So look at that for delicious. Okay, it's the first of our buffalo battered tofu tenders done. This will be banging with flavor and spice as well. I'm going in there first. Grizzly. So the tofu dries out. So if you want to see here, the tofu dries out. It's got like this double skin. Very tasty. Crispy, crunchy, dewy, delicious. Boom. Okay, one down. So we just like to take a quick break. We are learning Irish and we want to sing for you a little song. Begin Nakamora Kunde and Glor. Begin Nakamora Kunde and Glor. Woo! Okay, anyway, the second tofu. Okay, this one is like a tofu schnitzel. This is breaded, this is crispy, and this is like a cutlet. Right. So we have 200 grams of tofu that we chopped into 2 thin slices. So this isn't gonna be like tenders, which would be little strips. This is gonna be a large, kind of almost like a patty or a burger, or like a chicken breast. It's kind of like, I think it's like a breaded cutlet or a schnitzel. Gorgeous. Schnitzel. Okay, so in our marinade, we have 3 tablespoons of miso. I've got 2 tablespoons of mustard. Use whatever mustard you have, whether it's Dijon or whole grain or whatever. Mustard, 2 tablespoons. We've got 1 tablespoon of nutritional yeast. It's gonna give that nice kind of cheesy note. We've got 1 teaspoon of garlic powder. We're gonna add that to the pan along with 1 tablespoon of oil and 2 tablespoons of water. We're gonna whisk that all together. We're gonna add both our 2 halves of block of tofu and really marinate them so they're both really, really well covered. Okay, time to make our breadcrumbs. So I have 80 grams of panko breadcrumbs. Ideally, if you can get those, they're extra crispy, but whatever breadcrumbs will work fine. Okay, into that I'm adding in 1 teaspoon of onion powder. If you don't have onion powder, you could simply use garlic powder. And then finally, I have 1 teaspoon of mixed herbs of choice. Okay, time to bread our cutlet or our schnitzel. We're simply gonna take our marinated tofu and just drop it into our bread. You wanna try to get all the sides of it, really give it a good coating. Okay, I'm gonna pop 2 tablespoons of oil onto our pan. Then then in on top of that, we're just gonna pop a little bit of panko breadcrumbs in the top of it, just so that it really does crisp up nicely. So we fried these 5 minutes on each side until they go golden and crispy, and they look super tasty, really, really is. Okay, here we go. Tofu schnitzel. That marinade is just banging. Really is. Like, there's very, very good. Crispiness, there's a sweetness, there's a slight mustard note, there's a little bit of kind of like acidity coming through, umami. It's magnificent. That'd make a great main, really we would. Okay, that's 2 tofus down. Our third tofu, we're gonna do spicy tofu ribs. Okay, our third tofu, and possibly the best one, is the sticky barbecue tofu rubs. Really, really good. We're gonna
Rubs or ribs?
Ribs. Tofu ribs. I could say that again. We're gonna make like a sweet kind of ketchupy, deliciously reduced syrup glaze. And we're gonna char our tofu strips. So we have 200 grams of tofu. Again, I sliced it. I've allowed it on paper just to absorb a bit more moisture. And first step, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna brush our tofu tenders with a little bit of oil and salt before we kind of grizzle them or char them initially. So into 2 tablespoons of oil, I'm putting in a generous pinch of salt. Take a pastry brush and give it a nice little brush. We're gonna just brush the top of all our little tofu and add them straight into the pot. Okay, so while our tofu is frying away, I'm gonna quickly make our marinade. Into a small pot, I'm gonna add 8 tablespoons of ketchup of choice. I've got 8 tablespoons of brown sugar, whether you use coconut sugar, muscovado sugar, brown sugar, they'll all work perfectly. 3 tablespoons of tamari. I've got 1 teaspoon of paprika, 1 teaspoon of apple cider vinegar, and I've got a decent pinch of chili powder. I'm gonna whisk all that together and leave that to reduce for probably 3 to 5 minutes at a medium heat until it just starts to evaporate and thicken. Okay, so our sauce is reducing, the sugar is decrystallizing, we're getting this wonderful glaze, kind of syrup going here. My tofu is starting to char on one side. I'm gonna flip it over now and you'll see it. This is delicious, wait till you see it. Okay, this is the kind of fun bit. This is where we're taking our pastry brush and my brother is going to brush our tofu ribs with a little bit of our marinade. It's worthwhile just brushing them. It just means you're gonna get them more accurately. It's not gonna be as messy. Oh, this is exciting. Okay, this bit is a little hot. If you're in less of a rush and you wanna take your time, just do it off on a plate on the side. However, we kinda like to kinda do it on the fly. There's 2 of us, it's a little easier. Obviously, just take your time. Ideally, what you want to do is kind of layer over this glaze, get 1 layer, get a 2nd layer, and they're just going to be almost like kind of have this like kind of almost slightly glazed or tight, syrupy exterior, almost like a sweet. Yeah. Okay, these look great. They really do look. They smell fantastic as well. I'm going to pop them out and just lay them on a plate here. Okay, here we are. Time to try the barbecued tofu ribs. Okay, here we go. I'm going to go straight in with my hand. So they got a lovely kind of real seared exterior, slightly kind of, really does, it's crispy. It's sweet, it's spicy, it's umami, it's got like a soft inside as well, so it's beautiful. It really is like, it's as much as I can remember what a barbecue rib tastes like. You know, you had a barbecue rib for 20 years, so. However, anyway. Tastes very tasty now. There's our 3 tofu recipes, really, really good ones. They're all quite different. I often get lazy and cook tofu teriyaki style. These are 3 really different ways. Banging full of flavor. They make great centerpiece dishes. Please let us know what one you would enjoy most. Yeah, schnitzel, we've got our barbecued ribs, and we've got our buffalo double tofu tenders. Yeah, tofu tenders. So 3 different ways to tofu. Hope you really enjoyed this. Share this with anyone you think would like it, and thanks again for subscribing. We really appreciate it. Cheers.